For the first time in anyone's memory, 4 separate World Cup races have been staged on the same day, on the same track. All of them have been filled with drama, and several of them with close finishes. We get set for the final competition of the evening here in Park City, Utah. It's 2-man bobsled on stop 2 of the Viessmann FIBT World Cup. Hello once again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer, joined by Olympic gold medalist Kurt Tomasevich. And Kurt, these are highlights from run number 1. This is the young German pilot, Friedrich.
Friedrich had a great run in the first heat, the top German, but the Germans just haven't lived up to potential and haven't performed this year as they usually do. Of course, it's very early in the year. This is only the second race, but Friedrich sitting in 3rd place right now has to be feeling pretty good.
His more veteran, more accomplished German teammates are well back in the pack. But what has been a theme all day long, the North Americans. In this race, 2 USA sleds in the top 2 positions. This is Nick Cunningham and Dallas Robinson.
And those 2 USA sleds had the fastest 2 starts of the heat too. Dallas and Nick pushed a 4:86, which is a great start time in that little bit of snow that was coming down.
A good showing for Cunningham after a 10th last week in Calgary. He'll need to do it again to stay in the top 3, but this has been the dominant pilot of this young Olympic season. Stephen Holcomb paired this week with Chris Fote.
Yeah, Chris Fote again had that great start time. Fastest start of the race at a 4:85. Now they have pushed a little bit faster to 4:75 in team trials, but weather conditions were a little bit different then. And Holcomb is really driving that sled well right now.
The Olympic 4-man gold medalist and 3-time world champion won both races last week in Calgary 2 and 4-man, and he's on his way to making it 3 for 3 in 2013. On his way perhaps to being the best ever pilot in the United States in a long history in the sport. There's a look at all of the top 20 after run number 1. They will compete again. In the first heat, Kurt, there was a lot of snow falling. It has cleared up. It has gotten colder, near 0 Fahrenheit. So this will make for a very fair and fast second run.
Yeah, it is bitter and cold out there. Almost too cold to snow. So, you know, the snow is let up. That's going to leave nice, hard ice. And hopefully that ice will hold up. It's not going to get too brittle and fall apart.
That minus 10 is closer to 12 above Fahrenheit. It feels like 0. And who am I to complain sitting here in the warm booth? The start run for the second heat is a reverse reflection of their first heat standing. So the 2 American sleds, Cunningham and Holcomb, will be the last 2 to go. Another American, Corey Butner, in the mix. Chris Spring from Canada, who finished 3rd last week, falls a bit back in the standings this week. But Lyndon Rush well in the hunt as well, in what is a great race, as Kurt said, for the bronze medal position right now.
Yeah, it's very tight in this top 3. The top 6, actually, there's a tie for 6th place, 1/4 of a second back behind Holcomb. 5th and 4th place right now are only 1/100th of a second difference. It's going to be a great race, great second heat.
Sit back, enjoy the action. Our 4th and final competition of the day from Park City, Utah, site of the 2002 Olympic Games. And here's the first of 3 Russian pilots, Nikita Zakharov with Kirill Antuk, the brakeman. Opportunity in the early going here, Kurt, to talk about, like so many sports you see on TV, it's much tougher than it looks. And these guys are sprinting on ice, pushing a heavy machine.
Absolutely. That sled weighs about 170 kilograms is the minimum. Most sleds weigh a little bit over the minimum just to keep it legal. But that's not a very light machine that they're pushing right there. So it takes a lot of strength in addition to a lot of speed to be a great bobsled push athlete.
4:99 was their start time in run number 1. Oh, and they veer to the right away, but a faster time.
Drift to the right just a little bit. That might not hurt them too much. It's not going to hurt their start time. That's going to be inconsequential for that first 50-meter time, but it could hurt their start velocity. Right there you see 85.6 kilometers an hour for Zakharov.
World Cup bobsled is 2 heats, total time competition. The clock moving on the right side of your screen is added on from their first heat down time of 48.49. At the Olympics and the World Championships, it's a 4-heat race, Masters golf tournament. All about consistency, and for these sleds, it's all about moving up maybe 2 or 3 positions here in the second run.
Yeah, only the top 20 got a second run, so he's guaranteed at least 20th place. He can't fall back anymore.
to the 100th of a second, the Russian sled has the exact same finish time as their first heat, 48:49. That is consistency.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not an easy thing to do. Usually the track conditions change quite a bit. We saw most of the women improve their downtime for the second heat a little bit. Nikita had a 200th of a second faster push than they did in the first heat. But yeah, right there, comes out of the grooves and drifts to the right. But here he comes out of curve 10, steers quite a bit actually, but that back end of the sled still drifting just a little bit. You know, when you're going at full speed, it's really hard to pick up those small things, but not a real great run, but for the most part, Nikita should be happy with that.
With the lead, but Russia, with 2 Olympic medals in the last 2 Olympics, has never been behind a team from Korea in the standings. I think that's a pretty safe guess, but a great debut performance, at least relatively speaking, for Young Young Won and Young Woo So. Korea just trying to break into the scene. And Kurt, as you said earlier, for Korea, it's kind of a 5-year plan.
A little bit. They're going to be the host of the 2018 Olympics. So they're guaranteed a spot in that race because they're the host country. So they're trying to put forth the best heat possible. And it's not just that they're entering these races. They're actually looking to do really well. 4:96 start time is very respectable. And they actually had some great start times in the America's Cup, the North America's Cup race in Calgary a few weeks ago.
Great sound these sleds make, but if you have the keen ear, you want to hear it as quiet as possible. That generally means a good drop.
A little bit of a wave going through curve 6, kind of acting like a pendulum up and down through that long right-hand curve 6.
Zakharov with the lead down at the bottom. The Koreans 800s back. They extend that to 1000s. Moral victories are all you're looking for back in 19th and 20th place, and they may be on their way to one.
Crossing the line in first place for now of 48:43. 100th of a second slower, or excuse me, 200ths of a second faster than they were in the first heat. So maybe the ice conditions have kind of leveled off a little bit, and we're not going to see the improvements in the men's race that we just saw in the women's race.
Great showing by the Koreans. Really, I mean, it's not super fast, but it was fairly clean.
Yep, a little bit of a hard exit there. They hit the right wall just I think that's between curve 6 and 7. And that's the highest speed part of the track. So they're going well over 85 miles per hour there, 86, 87 maybe.
First of 2 sleds from the Netherlands. Pilot Ivo de Bruin and Arno Clausen, and actually a correction here. There were 2 at the start of the day, but Edwin van Kokker and Sybren Jansma did not make the top 20. So this is the lone Dutch sled here with the familiar orange colors and the bespeckled brakeman.
Ivo and Arno pushed a 5:01 in the first heat, which was 18th in the first heat, and finished 18th at the downtime too. So he's very consistent, where at least his start time was a reflection of his downtime as well. 4:99 there, improves the start time, but running that sled that deep sometimes can kind of kill your start velocity as well.
The Dutch, one of many nations in this sport that don't have their own track. They do live close to the track in western Germany in Winterberg, maybe a 2-hour drive from Amsterdam. And they call Winterberg the Dutch Alps, in fact.
Putting together a fairly good run, but falling back by 600ths of a second now, coming out of curve 14 into the straightaway. 132.3 kilometers an hour.
Around the finish, the Dutch take the lead by 200ths of a second. Much more to come from Park City. So 136.86, the 2-heat combined time for Ivo de Bruin and Arno Clausen. Some nations will only have 1 sled qualify for the Olympics. The Netherlands could be one of those nations, so there is a battle between de Bruin and van Kokker.
Yeah, and I would say it's Edwin's probably the favorite, but Ivo's a hungry athlete too. He really wants to do well. He ran it maybe a little bit too deep. You can see his brakeman Arno out there for almost 8 steps longer than what his driver was, and just barely gets in before the sled starts to go into curve 1. So even though they improved their start time from a 5:01 to a 4:99, that might hurt their start velocity a little bit.
We're here at Utah Olympic Park, a tremendous facility. Utah Olympic Park, the site of not only bobsled, skeleton, and luge, but freestyle aerials and ski jumping during the 2002 Olympic Games. A great facility about 5 miles from downtown Park City, Sundance Festival Town, and about 30 miles from downtown Salt Lake City. The competition continues with the sled from Romania, Nicolae Estrada, the pilot, with Florin Crăciun, the brakeman. This is a veteran pilot, great attitude, not so great with the equipment.
Exactly. He's been around for quite a while. 5:06 start time in the first heat. Not far from the best. He was 22nd in the first heat at the start. Drove up to a 17th place finish, I guess, after the first heat, excuse me. And was only 200ths of a second ahead of Ivo de Bruin, who's currently in first place.
Long, long run for Crăciun, the brakeman, and a 5:02 start time, the 4th fastest of the 4 that have gone. So fastest is a relative term.
Yeah, there's going to be much faster sleds come down, much faster starts. 85.8 kilometers an hour going into curve 3.
Hundredths up
into
now.
curve 4. 100th of a second ahead.
Speed now 83.4 miles an hour.
Coming out of the labyrinth.
A lot of
little bit of a
steering.
skid there, yep.
Steering is what you don't want in the sport of bobsled. That means those runners are moving, friction is caused. He's lost that advantage in a dead heat to the 100th of a second now. The uphill finish, he will fall behind likely.
Yeah.
And does it by 100th of a second. He hangs on.
Ivo shaking his head, he can't believe it either. Yeah, the entrance to curve 14. They,
small victories
yeah, exactly.
when you move up a spot.
I don't know how they gained that speed, because the entrance of 14, they shot right up to the roof and had a definite wave there. This is coming out of curve 10. Sled is skidding back and forth, a lot of steering right there.
And as I mentioned, steering is your enemy, and it will cost you several hundredths, not to mention the 100th, and really high.
Yeah, that's curve 13 into 14. Yeah, that's great work by the camera to catch that as well. Almost hit the roof there. And they're going to wave through the rest of curve 14 before they come into that straightaway. So where he got that speed must have been through the labyrinth between curves 7 and 10.
Well, as I mentioned, the story, in my opinion, isn't the fact that the United States and Canada have 3 in the top 4. It may be the fact that this Olympic silver medalist, 2-man pilot Tomas Florschutz, is way back in 16th place, with Kevin Kuska, maybe the greatest, most decorated push athlete of all time, behind him.
The top German push athlete should now be pushing a 4.96, a rank of 13 in the first heat, 4.95, so they improved by 100th of a second, but something just isn't clicking with the German program, at least through this first race and a half of the season.
What's the word or the sense you get in the start house? Is it injuries? Is it pacing? Or is it just experimentation?
So far, it's probably a fluke. I think you know, maybe it's you have to come to North America for the first few races of the year, and they're waiting for the second half really to turn it up. But again, they're not out of the mix. We know that Tomas Florschutz isn't going to be in 16th place in many races. He's going to be in the top 6, top 3 quite often.
Well, let's see how much better this one is. He was 48.37 in the first heat. He stands to do much better here with a speed of 83.5 miles an hour, 48.11.
Wow. Yeah, he was only 300ths of ahead of Nicolae Estrada in the first heat, and just jumped 37 hundredths of a second ahead now.
It's always nice, at least if you're not going to finish in the top 10, to walk away with your better run as the second heat.
Again, still not the start times that we would expect from the Germans. Florschutz getting, well, so is Kevin, getting on the sled a little slow. Maybe there are some injuries going on with the German team.
Manuel Machado, who finished in 3rd place in World Cup 2-man and 4-man last year, did not qualify for the first half of the season on the World Cup. Maybe licking his chops back in Germany, getting ready for his opportunity to try to qualify for the Olympics.
Yeah, the German program, they're 4, 5, 6 pilots deep that any one of them could win a World Cup race on a given day. So, you know, you see Florschutz right there looking a little bit disappointed with how the day has gone so far, but
not the normal proud look you see in the leader box.
Yeah, but 4-man race tomorrow and a long season ahead of them too.
Oskars Kibermanis is the Latvian pilot with Intars Dambis on the brakes. They put that sled down, and this is a very quick team at the start, as we've come to expect from the Latvians.
Yeah, 4th fastest start in the first heat, which is a great start, but something happened on the way down the track, and they crossed the line in 14th position, a tie for 14th position.
Latvia with a great tradition in this sport. Back when the Soviet Union was winning Olympic bronze and gold in the 1980s, those pilots were from Latvia, and they would tell you under their breath they were not representing the USSR, they were representing Latvia.
Yeah, that program's very deep with great, great push athletes. These guys pushed a 487 in the snow in the first heat. There's a great chance they can push even faster in this heat.
487, by far the fastest of those who have come down in the early going here in run 2.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see, well, Chris Spring and Jesse Lumsden and a few sleds could come close to that, but for the most part, that's definitely going to be a top 5 fastest start, even though Kibermanis a lot of times has a top 6 fastest start too.
Their advantage over the Germans was 600s heading into this run. Florschutz just put down a sizzler, so Kibermanis, who's still a little bit inexperienced as a pilot, will need to be near perfect.
Yep, he's riding that start velocity for as long as he could. He was 1/10 of a second ahead. Now he's 200ths of a second behind. Florschutz is going to move up.
A little bit of wavering down there at the bottom as the German holds on to the lead. No, it's the Latvian. Back 1 spot. So 2nd place for Latvia. I wonder how many spots Florschutz has the potential to move up.
Well, Bertazzo and Kibermanis were tied.
Right. And then Spring actually quite a bit ahead, and we expect a better run from him. Great start times, though, for these Latvians once again. Just a little bit of wavering there, but not bad. Now, who knows what happened after that freeze there. "14 sleds remaining here at the Olympic facility in Park City, Utah. And here come the Italians in 14th place. They were in a tie with the Latvians. Simona Bertazzo rolls off the tongue, the pilot who has won 2 World Cup races during his career. William Frolani is the brakeman. In fact, one of his victories, Kurt, was in Lake Placid, where the Tour moves next week.
Exactly. When Bertazzo, when he was winning those races, he was having a little bit better start times. 5:03 in the first heat, 5:05 in the second heat. You're not going to win a race when you're ranked 20th at the start.
Downtime record is 47.44. No one has really come close to that. It's a long-standing 10-year-old record set at the 2002 Olympics by Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire. Christoph Long and Marcus Zimmerman. What am I insinuating? I don't know.
Yeah, very big. 2400ths of a second back right now. Bertazzo is just gonna, he's not gonna hold that lead that he had coming in here over Florschutz. Florschutz is gonna move up another spot.
Well, we knew that the German certainly had the potential to do that. He had a great run, so it's still Germany out in front. As I mentioned, one of the bigger stories was the fact that Florschutz was so far back. And now maybe he can get to the top 12 or top 11. 3rd place for the time being for the Italians. Italy with a great tradition, Kurt, and some great tracks that unfortunately the Tour has not visited over the past few years.
Yep, you can see that, man, Bertazzo hit that sled hard because that driver hits the sled on the left side. Sometimes if the brake athlete picks the sled up just a little bit, you can see how the back end of the sled comes out of the grooves just a little bit. And it's not a huge factor or a huge detriment to their start time, but every little bit counts when you're coming down to the 100th of a second.
The first of 3 sleds in the top 13 for Canada. And this was the best of the 3 last week. Chris Spring, the former Australian pilot, now makes his home in Calgary. His big brakeman, Jesse Lumsden, a former CFL star. Injuries drove him away from football, but does not deter his speed and strength in the sport of bobsled.
Yeah, he's a beast of an athlete. He won the World Push Championship that was held last week up in Calgary.
Originally Lumsden from Burlington, Ontario. His father was just inducted into the CFL Hall of Fame.
4:85 start, so they dropped that start time by 0.03 of a second. That equals the fastest start of the first heat that Chris Fote and Steve Holcomb put down.
Spring, as I mentioned, originally from Australia, has been competing for several years from Canada, but finally became officially a Canadian earlier this year. He received his citizenship on Canada Day over the summer. Big lead right now over floor shoots.
Huge lead, but it's slowly slipping away. It was 0.31 of a second ahead. Now it's 30 hundredths of a second ahead. Now only 26. So he's going to hold the lead. Great speed, and it's going to be enough to pass up floor shoots, but not. It is the fastest heat of the run.
48.02, and that
Fastest
speed
run of the
you
heat,
alluded to was 82.7. So by 23 hundredths of a second, pretty safely ahead of the Germans.
Yeah, and that all comes down to that start. 4:85 start. That's huge.
There are a bunch of sleds within striking range of this Canadian team that are about to come, so they could move back into the top 10. And again, a good way to finish the night. Look at that drive by Lumsden in the back.
Yeah, it takes 2 to push a sled, and Chris Spring is not a bad push athlete either. So if they put that team together, a 4:85 takes 2 to push, but Jesse's just a beast powering that thing from the back end.
Good job.
Yeah, Chris probably isn't going to be too happy with staying in 13th place. He's looking to move up and have better future days.
And hopefully to put on a jacket, because it is now in the single digits. This has certainly one of the pleasant surprises of run number 1. Appearing for the first time this year, the French team, Louis Coster, the pilot, Romain Heinrich, the brakeman. Did you expect to see them in 12th place?
No, their start time in the first heat was a 5:03. That was the same as the Italians, and we were just talking about how that's not gonna do well, not gonna get you up into the top 10. But somehow this French team drove their way to the top 12, at least in the first heat. It's hard to be a young pilot and be consistent, so we'll see how he does trying to put 2 heats together.
Potentially a bit of a renaissance for a nation that won Olympic bronze in 1998, won a world championship in 4-man the following year in 1999. One of the great pilots, Bruno Mangeon.
And once again, a 5:03 push time in the first heat. Let's see if they can improve that a little bit. Okay, 5:02, 1/100th of a second. But again, if he's going to hold on to 12th place where he was in the first heat, he's really going to have to drive well. Especially after Chris and Jesse lay down a smoker of a run.
The difference between the Canadian sled with the lead down at the bottom and this sled on the ice is just 300ths entering this heat, and it's up to 3/10, so that's a big deficiency to make up.
Yeah, he's definitely going to fall back behind Chris Spring, possibly behind floor shoots as well.
Well, he's evened it up, and he could still beat the German here. Skidding now, it's not going to happen. He'll fall back 2 or 3 positions. He falls back 2 spots just behind the German as the Canadians hold on to their spot.
48:40 downtime in that second heat, which is 2/10 slower than what he was in the first heat. So again, we talk about the consistency where a lot of the teams improved their downtime in the second heat. He had a hard time keeping that.
All things considered, a top 14 here in their season debut. Not too bad.
Yeah, you can tell being young and new on the circuit, they're excited to be here, and maybe that's that little bit of being naive might be a little bit of a benefit too. They just don't know what they're getting into and don't know when they should be nervous, I guess.
Ignorance is bliss.
Exactly. Coming out of curve 14, yeah, hits that right wall pretty quick, but not bad speed. 4th fastest speed, 132.9 kilometers an hour.
French down. Final sled before the break is the second of 3 from Germany, Max Arndt, a world championship medalist. His brakeman, Marco Udenbaker.
Marco in the back of that sled is a giant. 6'6" at least. I'm not sure how tall he is exactly, but long strides, really powerful. 5:01 start time, though. Again, that's not the start times we're used to coming from the German team.
This is this just practice for the four-man for Arndt? We see that. We certainly see some pilots that are clearly a specialist in one discipline.
Could very well be. Hubenbaker also on his four-man team. You know, that giant also has to fit to a four-man sled somehow too. But 135 kilometers an hour, great speed there. A tenth of a second back now only.
Now down to the lower portion of this track, Arndt 600ths back as he looks to chase down the Canadians.
He's slowly reeling them in. This is going to be really close. 134.7.
Across the finish, Arndt does it by 200ths of a second. So it's Germany with the lead. The top 10 still to come in Park City. When we return, Bjorn Hefty, the World Cup champion, set to go. Very tight. Every little mistake or good piece of driving makes a difference at this point.
Yeah, you can see the typical mistake a lot of drivers make out of curve 10 into 11. That small straightaway right there is to drift to the right. If you can hold it onto the left and take that early entrance into 11 without hitting a bump too early, that's the best line.
Max Arndt of Germany with the lead by 200ths of a second here in Park City, Utah. The second World Cup stop on a long and winding track, winding its way towards the Sochi Olympics in just about 2.5 months. That's a lot of racing still ahead in a short time. This is the second of 3 from Canada. The pilot, Justin Cripps, 26-year-old Hawaiian native who moved to Calgary. And his brakeman, a lot of big things are expected from this track star, Brian Barnett, 26 years old from Edmonton.
Yeah, they also pushed a 48 in the first heat and tied Jesse Lumsden and Chris Spring, the other Canadians. Jesse and Chris dropped their start time by 300, so let's see what Justin and Brian can do. Cripps actually part of the, Justin Cripps and Jesse Lumsden paired up to have the start record on this track at a 477, so you know Justin is a great pushing driver here. So again, 488 in the first heat, 489 in this heat, so they actually fall back 100th of a second.
Great sound of those sleds. The advantage of this Canadian team over the Germans down at the bottom is just 100th of a second. Every little turn and twist matters, and they've opened that up to 1800ths.
Yeah, even though they fell back by 100th of a second compared to their first start time, that start velocity was really good, and that's kind of magnifying as they go down and just kind of building. 1600th of a second lead now. Holds at 16, so they're not gaining any time, but they're not falling back either. We're probably going to hold that time. Pretty decent speed, 133.8 kilometers an hour.
It's 83.2 miles an hour. So 136.11, the two heat combined time by 1200ths of a second. They move ahead of the Germans. That will likely be a top 10. In fact, that's guaranteed a top 10.
Yeah, Justin's probably going to be pretty pleased with that. You know, beating one of his teammates, that's you know, although you're always rooting for your teammates to do well, it's always a good feeling. Here you can see at the start, both great great pushers, even though Justin is still a driver. Brian in the back of that sled, a great track athlete. Could have maybe run it a step or two deeper, but you know, that's a 489 start, great start velocity. Justin can clean some of those runs up just a little bit, and they can move up higher than a top 10 finish.
Canada with Olympic medals dating back as far as 1964 and as recently as 2006, or 2010 rather, Lyndon Rush with the bronze. We'll see Rush in a little bit, but next, the second of 3 Russian sleds. Alexander Kazyanov had the inviolable #1 start position in the first heat. Really couldn't capitalize. Only a 9th place position, and that was on a snowy day where that #1 spot might have really yielded better results.
Yeah, sometimes that can be a good thing or a bad thing, actually. If you're the first one off, sometimes if it's snowing, you're the snowplow for the other sleds as well. But either way, they pushed a 494 in the first heat. Compare that to the 493 in the second heat. So maybe there was a little bit more snow in the grooves. When they pushed in the first heat, they were able to drop their start time a little bit, but still behind Justin Cripps.
Early speed at 53.6 miles per hour. The second fastest split at that point. Still just 100th in back at this point of the Canadians.
So he must have had a smoother top half of the track so far. 100th of a second back, now 200ths of a second back.
Russia getting set to host the Olympic Games. 3 Russian sleds will likely take part, and they know that Sochi track well. Good job here on the bottom of the track by this Russian, but he falls further in back. Cripps and Barnett move up 1 spot. Kazyanov will just crack the top 10. I mean, we say that that's based on his standing right now. We don't know what the next sleds will do.
Yeah, it's always a luck of the draw sometimes if you do draw number 1. Most of the time it's an advantage, but because it was snowing lightly for that first sled, maybe there was a little bit of snow in the grooves, and they were kind of that snow plow for the rest of the field. But it turns out he fell even further back in the second heat. So doing a lot of driving between curves 10 and 11.
One more Russian sled still to come, the 2-time Olympic medalist Alexander Zubkov. 2 Americans from Utah have the lead after the first run. Here are another pair of Americans, these 2 from California. Corey Butner, the pilot from Yucaipai, 31-year-old, and his tall brakeman, Chuck Berkeley, out of Walnut Creek, California. Tallest and oldest member of the American team at 37 years old.
I don't think he minds us talking about his height, but I don't know if he wants us talking about his age. Chuck, a really great track athlete, really long strides here. I know he was pretty disappointed in the 494 that they had in the first heat. Let's see if he can drop that start time a little bit. 492, that's the right track.
Real breakout season last year for Corey Butner, and just his second full season as a driver. He was 3rd in the 2-man rankings, very consistent from start to finish.
Corey coming out of curve 5 seems to have a lot better top half of the track than he did in the first heat. He's 300ths of a second ahead of Justin right now. He's got some great runners, a great sled. See if, yep, it's building to 500ths of a second now between curve 10 and 11.
Bit of a skid there in the straightaway.
That
This
could
next
cost him.
split will be very telling. A 10th, so this sled is opening it up. These American sleds tend to withstand a bit of a tap here and there.
Yeah, as long as you can keep the sled straight, a tap won't hurt you that much. 47.89, that's a great downtime.
The best time of the second heat. A great showing by Corey Butner and Chuck Berkeley, guaranteeing a top 8.
Now he's only 300ths of a second behind a tie for 6th place, so there's a good chance that he could break into that top 6 and get an award.
Final 6 to come from Park City, Utah.
Again, a great start this time. They improved their start time to a 4:92. They load into the sled at just the right times. Looks like Chuck was at top speed getting in, maximizes that start velocity. Corey coming out of curve 10 into 11. Again, does take that tap, but for the most part doesn't do a lot of steering and keeps that sled straight.
Look at my hair. Hey, you look good. You look good.
Back here in Park City, Utah, during the 2002 Olympic Games, Martin Ahnen of Switzerland captured a silver medal with big Beat Hefty on the brakes. Hefty made the transition, as so many of the top push athletes do, to driver. He won his World Cup debut 4 years ago, and now Hefty trying to hang on. He's a veteran at 35 years old, trying to hang on for one more burst of glory. Hasn't been a great start of the season for him. Well, actually, I take that back. He was 2nd last week. Hasn't been a great first run here, back in 6th place. His brakeman, Alex Bowman. Big, strong athletes, Kurt.
Yeah, when Beat Hefty moved to the driver's bar, he kind of set the standard for great push athletes becoming drivers, and all of a sudden they were having the fastest start times by a 10th of a second in some tracks. And a 490 there, a little bit slower than they had in the first run from a 486. Might be a little bit disappointed in that, but he's got great equipment, and he became a great driver very quickly.
Switzerland is his home track, the only natural track, the longest track in the world, in the resort town of San Moritz, where the Tour is, I believe, the only track that the Tour visits every year. A lot of tradition in Switzerland.
Yep. Lead is slowly slipping away. He was up to 7/100ths of a second ahead. Now only 3/100ths of a second coming into the last two curves. A little tap here into curve 15 uphill.
Will it be the American or the Swiss? It is the American by 2/100ths of a second.
Well, we knew this was going to be a great battle for sixth place between three sleds. It's going to be a great battle for the top few spots between a number of different sleds. So be it just a little bit slower than Corey in that second run, and that cost him. But yeah, Corey's got to be pretty excited.
Hefty, a mild-mannered athlete with a powerful push.
Yeah, very quiet, doesn't say a whole lot, but you put a sled in his hands and he's going to do some damage with it.
The Americans, though, hold the edge. Bobsled are really three things at work here, Kurt. You know, we say it week in and week out, but you can't overstate it. You've got the push, you've got the drive, and you've got the equipment. And all three need to be working on a given night. The equipment, perhaps the most unpredictable from track to track.
Yeah, a lot of times you're playing a guessing game, trying to figure out what runners to use to put on the right sled at the right time, trying to figure out the right steering setup, what weight to have in the sled if you want to run heavy, to have a good downtime, or run light, have light to have a good start time.
Alexander Zubkov, 39-year-old pilot from Siberia. His brakeman, veteran also, Dmitry Trunyankov. This is a two-time Olympic medalist. 4-man and 2-man medals.
And again, you see Coach Pierre Luters on the right side of the screen behind him. A lot of success for Coach Luters as an athlete.
Oh, a lot of steering right there at the top.
Yep.
Not a bad time, 493, but he had to do the correction. That's going to cost him.
Yep, that 493 isn't going to reflect that little mistake, but if he didn't handle curve one properly, it's going to show here a little bit. Right now, he lost the lead. He's now in the red already. Corey could move up if Alexander doesn't have a great drive this bottom half of the track.
Which he is known to do. The Zubkov sled is generally pretty quick down at the bottom, but that was a big problem, and he's still doing more steering.
A lot of steering there. He's 5/100ths of a second back, and I don't think he's going to have the speed at the bottom to catch Corey. Corey's going to move up to the top 6.
In his home country, as we were saying earlier, if he wins, he'll be a hero. If he loses at the Olympics, he could be sent right back to Siberia. He has no chance against the Americans here.
Wow.
As Zubkov falls back 3 positions.
Incredibly disappointed, I'm sure, for Zubkov and Trunyankov. Yeah, when he gets out of this sled, he's got to kind of mind his manners and not be able to, or he's got to have to control his temper a little bit.
One thing he has going for him, of course, Kurt, is he gets to go home during the holidays and take a couple of more dozen tracks down the Sochi course and have that much of an advantage over the others.
You know, right here it looked like a great start. Everything was going smooth. They jump into the sled, and as the grooves end, right there, the sled tends to break to the right. It's like a ghost just came up and grabbed the sled and moved it to the right side.
We said there would be a lot of shuffling between the 3rd and 8th position here in the second run, and certainly that's been the case with the Americans. Butner and Berkeley, the recipients of moving up right now, but here's another one, very strong at the top. The Latvians, Oskars Melbardis, Domants Dreskins, they have an 800ths advantage over the USA team with the lead down at the bottom.
And I don't know why they pushed the rank of 7 in the start of the first heat. There is no way they should be that far back. These two guys are definitely usually the top 2 pushing athletes put together on a team. So a 489 in the first heat was incredibly disappointing to see. I expect them to be 4 low 80s here.
Great leg drive. Smooth load. Start time 484 and much cleaner than the Russians that this came down around curve 1.
Yeah, when he jumped into the sled there, you know, he was pushing as hard as he could. Sometimes you have to be very gentle getting the sled. He was very deliberate as he got into that sled, and his moves were not really quick, but at the same time, when you push a 484 like that, that's a great time.
1200s up now, a little bit of a veer, but a quick correction there.
Slowly losing that lead. I don't know if it's going to be enough here, but Only 0.04 of a second now. There's a good chance that Corey's going to have the lead here.
This is for a top 5 finish for the
Turn
Americans.
red.
And it's looking good for the USA as Oscars Melbardis negotiates back 2 spots, 900ths behind the USA.
Beat Hefty from the Switzerland team also moved ahead of Melbardis there.
I love that point in the leader box when the expression changes from delight to a bit of surprise.
Exactly.
Like, how is this happening to us?
Yeah, that's a great feeling when you see it go from green to red, even though you see that that sled in front of you go and have a perfect run.
It wasn't a sensational run, but on this short track in Park City, the smallest of problems will cost you a place or two.
And you can see here when Melbardis jumps into the sled, 2 hands on the side. A lot of drivers like to keep 1 hand on the push bar. Kind of makes it a quicker move and less movement, but still a 484 push time. There's no reason he should have fallen back behind Corey Butner. A little bit sideways coming between curve 10 and 11, but you know it's a very difficult thing to go straight out of curve 10 to that small straightaway into 11.
Following a 5-year football career at the University of Saskatchewan, Lyndon Rush turned to bobsled and made great progress over his first years as a pilot, culminating with an Olympic bronze medal on his home track in Whistler in 2010. Looking to peak again this year for the Olympic Games, 4th place with a 2-time Olympic medalist, Lascelles King Brown on the brakes, one of the best in the backseat.
Yeah, there you can see coming out of the grooves, he overcorrected maybe a little bit, kind of steered away curve 1. They push a 489, which is a 200ths of a second improvement from the first heat, but Lyndon very much aware of what happened to the Russians and the Latvian team ahead of them, so maybe he prepared for that and steered the sled a little bit to the left.
And his advantage was only 100th over the Latvians, 900ths in fact the Americans, who have picked off several sleds here.
Lyndon drives this track really well. In fact, last year he had the lead up until curve 12 in the last run. Steve Holcomb and I were in 2nd place at that time, but Lyndon ended up crashing.
He may be giving this away. He
turned red already.
Another advantage for the USA and disappointment for the Canadians as Lyndon Rush falls back 2 spots. We knew it would be tight. We knew there would be shuffling. But this is a big, big celebration for the United States.
Yeah, this is huge. There's only 1 German team left that could possibly break up a sweep of the podium for the Americans in this race.
Providing those last 2 American sleds don't meet disaster.
Exactly.
One thing I love about the sport, whether you move up in the standings or down in the standings, you congratulate your teammate, you congratulate the team in the lead. A lot of sportsmanship in bobsled.
Yeah, Lyndon Rush and Lascelles Brown, great sportsmen as well. Again, a good start time. 489, improved the start times there. But you can see here, Lyndon may be aware of what happened to the Russians ahead of them. He steers to the left. Well, no, he doesn't steer. The sled just broke away to the left a little bit. But he handled it pretty well and kept some pretty good start velocity.
Only 3 sleds remain now in Park City, and as Kurt Tomasevich just told us, this German sled and the American sled down at the bottom make up the difference of what could conceivably be a USA 1-2-3 sweep in the standings. I'm not sure that's ever happened, but first things first, a very good pilot and already a 2-time world champion medalist at just the age of 23, Francesco Friedrich, on course.
486 start time, improved their start time by 0.03 of a second from the first heat. Friedrich, again, a great athlete. Even though he's a driver, he tested very high among the push athletes as well. 86.3 kilometers an hour, that's pretty good velocity. 0.02 of a second ahead. I don't see him losing that lead.
That's a speed of 84.1 miles an hour. He's had the fastest split right through the top 3 now. And as you said, now the track is running out on the Americans down at the bottom. This will be a bronze medal winning performance for the Germans, unless something major happens down here.
Yeah, I don't think that's possible. 134.5 kilometers an hour.
And he hangs on by 0.13. So the USA falls back 1 spot. That's bad news for the Americans. The good news for the USA, Kurt, only 2 sleds remain, both from the red, white, and blue.
Yeah, this is going to be exciting to see these last 2 sleds come down. You know, Friedrich just put down a smoker of a run.
This guy,
it's not set in stone that the U.S. is going to keep those top 2 spots.
Friedrich's certainly the future of a nation that has been the best historically in this sport. Nice job at the start. Not a huge athlete, unlike so many of the Germans.
Yeah, Giannis in the back of the sled. A great push athlete as well, paired up with Francesco. But again, their equipment and driving is really what got them here to at least the third place finish. Very smooth out of curve 14. A little bit of a tap, but again, kept the sled straight.
At least a bronze medal for the Germans. They will now kick back and watch two American sleds, see what they can do. This is the USA sled piloted by Nick Cunningham, 28 years old, from Monterey, California. He actually has spent a lot of time in Idaho as well. His brakeman this week from Lexington, Kentucky, just outside in Georgetown, Dallas Robinson, a relative newcomer to the team that's clearly making a big difference.
Yeah, Dallas is a great sprinter. Another tall athlete too. You see a lot of Americans here watching this race, attending this race. It's going to be loud at the top. The last two sleds coming down, American sleds, there's going to be a lot of bells and whistles and sirens making a lot of noise.
Robinson has pushed with some success over the years with Cunningham and Corey Butner, and the retired John Napier showing his versatility in the backseat.
They had the second fastest start time in the first heat at a 4:86, tied for the second fastest. 4:87, so they fall back 100th of a second, and fourth fastest so far.
And looking at what could be his best ever World Cup result.
But he's looking forward. He had a 900th of a second lead over Friedrich coming into this. Now only 600ths of a second, so maybe that start velocity wasn't as effective.
This is for a gold medal for the United States. The only thing that will be in question is which USA sled it will be, still holding on to 600ths.
Now the other BMW sleds in the women's race, as well as Corey Butner in the men's race here, did very well at the bottom of the track. These sleds are really going well at top end speeds. 600ths of a second ahead right now.
83 miles an hour, just a mile an hour slower than the midway point, and they do it. So it will be gold for the United States. What's left to be determined is, will the gold be awarded to pilot Nick Cunningham or Stephen Holcomb? But a great showing regardless of what happens.
Just enough. That was a great run by Nick, a pretty good push by Dallas. Pretty happy pair right there.
It's been a huge day for the United States on this FIBT World Cup with the Pika Space victory, the Alana Myers victory, now a guaranteed gold medal for the USA in two-man bobsled.
Yeah, the sliding sports are looking great coming into the Sochi year. You know, such a close race. Any little mistake could have cost him. Nick had a very straight run coming out of curve 14, took a tiny bit of a tap, but still it was just enough by 400ths of a second.
USA guaranteed the gold medal, but one sled still remains. Stephen Holcomb trying to stay undefeated in this Olympic season. Last week he competed with Steve Langton. Now he has the Iraq War veteran Chris Fote on the brakes. Chris Fote, the U.S. push champion this year.
Yeah, Chris really turned it on these last 2 years. He's a great sprinter, really improved his strength, and it's really showing in these start times. 4:82 start time, that's by far the fastest we've seen tonight. That's pretty exciting to see, especially when I get a chance to push with him tomorrow in the four-man race.
Kurt Tomasevich will be on the sled tomorrow, as Holcomb will try to make it a perfect 4 for 4 this season, but not to get ahead of ourselves. He is looking to win this two-man race, seemingly in good shape to do so. 1800ths extends to 1900ths, a bit of a veer in the straightaway.
Yeah, he straightened it out really quickly, but a little bit of a mistake there, but Steve knows this track like the back of his hand. He's been down it 1,000 times, 2100ths of a second lead. No way he can lose that now. Victory for the Americans.
So gold medal, 3 for 3. 3 races for Stephen Holcomb. Another top finish, and the USA finishes 1, 2, and 4. Top Canadians, Lyndon Rush and Justin Cripps in 6th and 8th place. Celebration down at the finish.
Yeah, that's great to see for Chris Fote. You know, he's been with a number of pilots. You know, not all of them have finished in the top 10. He actually ended up on his head at the 2010 Olympics, riding with John Napier in the four-man race. But you know, I think he could get used to winning. He's got a pretty big smile on his face, I'm sure, underneath that helmet.
We talk about home track and home cooking. That is literally the case for Stephen Holcomb, who grew up and still lives here in Park City.
Hi, Cooper. Hope you're doing good.
I think the grammatically proper way would be, I hope you're doing well. He has an excuse to celebrate.
Yeah, you can still see how bitter cold it is with the steam coming off both those guys. But adrenaline after winning a race, can't feel that at all.
Stephen Holcomb, another day, another brakeman, another gold medal. He is perfect so far in this Olympic season as he captures gold here in the World Cup two-man competition on his home track in Park City, the United States finishing first, second, and fourth, with the German Francesco Friedrich in third place. Much more ahead from Park City, including interviews with the top finishers. A look at the final standings to make it official. Quarter of a second, the clear advantage for Holcomb over his teammate Nick Cunningham. Friedrich in third. Very tight battle between fourth, fifth, and sixth, with Corey Butner moving up several spots here in run number 2. A look at the top 20 here in the second World Cup race of this Olympic season. A long but dramatic and exciting night of action here in Park City, Utah, as we check out the two-race World Cup standings in the two-man bobsled competition. Holcomb extending his lead for the United States ahead of Switzerland's Beat Hefty, and Francesco Friedrich, finishing third today, sits in that same position on the World Cup. Lyndon Rush in 8th place, as the Canadians are off to a good start as well with 3 in the top 11. So they head to Lake Placid next, but another big night for the USA on their home track as the team of Holcomb and Chris Fote capture the gold medal. The flower presentation now taking place down at the finish area as you look at 2 out of 3 Americans and the German squad. The team of Stephen Holcomb and Chris Fote with the fastest run in both heats. In fact, Holcomb's victories in the first 3 races, 2 of them two-man and 1 in 4-man this year, haven't really even been close. The only question remaining in this Olympic season, is he peaking too early, or is this the start of what could be a historic and dominating season? Once again, it's USA, and Germany, the top 3 here in the World Cup in Park City. John Morgan is standing by with the top 3 finishers. What's the mood like there, John?
Very positive mood down here expected. Team Friedrich, 2 good start times, 2 good drives?
Yes, two very good start times and middle good drives, and so we get place number 3.
That's the second time you've medaled on this track. Congratulations. See you tomorrow. Okay, now over to here to congratulations here from Coach Brian Scheimer and Team Cunningham. Wow. Geez, you had 2 really good runs. Great starts, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean it's coming here, home track advantage, kind of letting us, take that confidence and build on it. And not my best performance in Calgary, so I really wanted to take that and come in here. And I got Dallas pushing me in the 2-man, so I had everything going for me. Great mechanics, great coaching here, and great confidence booster going into next week.
Congratulations. Boy, he got really low in the sled this time. Hey, Team Holcomb, wow. 2 different brakemen at 2 nights, great start times. You've now won 6 straight 2-man races in North America. What do you got to say about that?
I don't know. I think this is we're just having a great couple of years. North America. I grew up on these tracks, so I know these better than any tracks. But when you have 2 great starts, it's easy to stay in the lead. Just kind of point in the right direction. I've been down this track a million times. It's where I learned. It's my home track, and came out victorious. It was a good day.
Congratulations, Team Holcomb. You guys see you all tomorrow.
Yep.
All right, John. Well, with 3 world championships and an Olympic gold medal, Stephen Holcomb is certainly the best American pilot in the 21st century. But this veteran is now knocking on the door of some bigger distinctions. If he keeps it up this year, in this Olympic year, Stephen Holcomb is on his way to becoming the best American pilot ever and the best bobsled driver in the world right now. It'll be a fun story to watch as the season moves along, and that story will continue tomorrow with the 4-man competition. An exciting day of bobsled and skeleton here in Park City. For Kurt Tomasevich, I'm Tim Singer. Thanks for joining us. Gold medal for the United States.
Hi, Cooper. Hope you're doing good. Cheers.
They go off.